we are going to listen our there another participant from NFM conference, NFM virtual conference, Gökhan Gizer from Helmholtz-Zentrum, Geesthacht, Germany. He's going to present his presentation as an invited speaker, and he's going to present his presentation live. Dr. Gökhan Gizer, do you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yes, I hear you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome again.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I just share my screen. Yeah.
We can start the recording. If you are ready, you can start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I am a postdoctoral researcher at Helmholtz-Zentrum Geesthacht in Germany, and I would like to speak today about solid-state hydrogen storage and the role of additives on the kinetic and thermodynamic properties of amide-based hydrogen storage reactive hydride composites. Yeah. In the beginning of my presentation, I will discuss the motivation lying behind this work. Following this, I will give a brief introduction to the principles of amide-based hydrogen storage, and I will share my results based on magnesium amide lithium hydride system with two different additives, which are potassium modified lithium titanides and lithium borohydride. We will definitely consume more energy in the future. I also want to use the pointer. Especially in the non-OECD countries due to the population and economic growth. Nowadays, our main source of energy are from fossil fuels, which leads to the release of harmful gases into the atmosphere. And share of renewables in the energy consumption was less than 15% in 2016. With this scenario, our planet will face unavoidable and non-reversible changes, which will badly affect all living beings. And investments to the renewable energy production is growing every year. And our goal is to make renewables the main source of energy consumption in 2050. Already nowadays, electricity production via renewables are a cheaper option in some part of the world than the fossil fuels, which will accelerate this change. Renewable energy production is challenging mainly due to the intermittent nature of the sunlight and wind, for example. Actually, last year during Easter in Germany, due to high renewable energy generation and lower demand, electricity prices were negative. These challenges tell us that we have to find an efficient way to store large amount of energy for a long period. Using hydrogen as an energy vector is one of the solutions we have to consider, mainly due to the high energy density of hydrogen. Actually, it has the highest gravimetric energy density per mass, which is 3 times more than the one of gasoline, and it's environmentally friendly if it's produced from renewable sources. Storing hydrogen is not an easy task, mainly due to its low volumetric energy density at ambient conditions. Therefore, it needs to be pressurized either up to very high pressures, or it needs to cool down to very low temperatures in order to reach an optimum volumetric capacity. Solid-state hydrogen storage brings the advantage of storing hydrogen at moderate temperature and pressure conditions. Depending on the system, high gravimetric and volumetric densities can be reached. Metal amides were discovered actually a long time ago. As an example, the formation of magnesium amide by interaction of magnesium with gaseous ammonia was already reported in 1913. However, at the time of its discovery, it didn't have a practical application. Thermal decomposition of magnesium amide leads to the release of a high amount of ammonia while forming magnesium nitride, in the end, which is known as a stable compound. Therefore, the reaction is non-reversible, and mass spectrometry signal also confirms that ammonia release. That's why magnesium amide was not considered as a hydrogen storage material. In 2002, an amide hydride hydrogen storage system was reported for the first time. Lithium amide lithium hydride system has a storage capacity of 6.5 weight% and a dehydrogenation enthalpy of 66 kilojoule per mole, which means that theoretically this system can desorb at 275 degrees, which is too high for practical applications. Replacing lithium amide with magnesium hydride, high hydrogen capacity can be maintained, and the system has much lower dehydrogenation enthalpy. Theoretically, this system should be able to absorb hydrogen at 75 degrees. Therefore, it can be coupled with a proton exchange membrane fuel cell. However, I observed experimentally that the onset reactions for the endothermic reaction is at about 150 degrees. The reason is the severe kinetic barriers that are precluding the hydrogen release below 100 degrees. In order to understand this, we should first have a look at the interaction between an amide and hydride. The main attractions between an amide and hydride are the Coulombic attractions between the protic hydrogen and hydric hydrogen, as well as positively charged lithium from the hydride and negatively charged nitrogen from the amide, which leads to the formation of the amide and release of hydrogen. For this reason, interaction between amide and hydride is crucial to obtain fast reaction kinetics. Here I drew the hydrogenation reaction schematically, and the reaction starts between amide and hydride particles at the interface, and a thin amide layer is formed, and later reactions proceed between amide-imide and imide-hydride interfaces. Another important topic is also the mass transportation of the ionic species through this imide layer. These two important phenomena are defining the reaction kinetics. And to overcome these kinetic barriers, one way is to do ball milling. Ball milling is a well-known technique to prepare nanomaterials. It is very helpful for amide-based systems since we can homogeneously mix reactants, increase interface areas, and decrease diffusion distances. However, I experienced that even after intense ball milling, samples exhibit still high activation energies. That's why using an appropriate additive is crucial to obtain fast reaction kinetics. In this work, I studied potassium modified lithium titanate and lithium borohydride as an additive. The first system I would like to talk about is the magnesium amide lithium hydride system with potassium modified lithium titanites. Potassium containing additives are known to accelerate the reaction kinetics of magnesium amide lithium hydride system. However, such fast kinetics are lost at high temperatures due to agglomeration of potassium species and inhomogeneous degree of mixing, which results with poor cycling performance. On the other hand, it's also reported that lithium titanites are improving the lithium mobility in magnesium boride lithium hydride system. In this work, I studied the effect of potassium modified lithium titanate on the reaction kinetics and the phases that are responsible for the improved kinetics. With this purpose, I prepared the sample compositions that are listed in this table. I will use always sample codes to represent the sample compositions. First two letters are representing magnesium amide, second letters are representing lithium hydride, and the amount of additive and the type of additive. LTO stands for lithium titanate, and if there's K, means that this sample is containing potassium modified lithium titanate. It's a bit complex and long sample name. One of the most accurate ways to determine the reaction kinetics and released hydrogen capacities is to do volumetric measurements using differential pressure method. The data colored in black shows the pristine sample that is dissolving around 4.5 weight% of hydrogen with onset temperature of approximately 180 degrees. As in the so we see that addition of lithium titanide, only lithium titanide doesn't seem to have any positive effect. And the samples containing potassium have slightly lower onset temperatures. Improvement is from the potassium modified additive is more clear when there is hydrogen absorption, where all the samples with containing potassium modified additive, they are absorbing faster compared to the pristine sample. And if we look at the thermal analysis, thermal analysis is a useful tool to obtain information about the samples such as onset temperatures, reaction steps, and so on. During heating of the pristine sample, which is the data colored black, two endothermic peaks are present between 170 and 220 degrees. Presence of lithium titanide, which is the data colored red, doesn't lead to any improvement. However, if this additive is modified with potassium, onset and peak temperatures are reduced about 30 to 20 degrees. Also mass transportation, mass spectrometry data shows that ammonia release from this sample is minimized until 220 degrees, and main release gas is hydrogen. Now we have an initial picture about the sample. The samples containing potassium have faster reaction kinetics and lower reaction temperatures. Therefore, we should expect to calculate lower activation energies. In order to do it, I measured these samples with the DSC using Kissinger plots. It is seen in the first desorption reaction of the pristine sample that it has an activation energy of 183 kilojoule per mole. On the contrary, the activation energy value rises to 211 kilojoule per mole for the sample which has potassium modified additive. In this point, we have unexpected results, since with samples containing potassium, we have lower onset temperatures and faster reaction kinetics, but these samples have higher activation energies, apparent activation energies, and higher frequency factor, which is related to collisions between amide hydride particles. In order to shed light into this fact, I calculated the kinetic constant by Arrhenius expression. As seen in this figure, the desorption rate of the samples with potassium are faster than the pristine sample. This contradictory results can be attributed to the increase in the frequency factor, which leads to the possibly more efficient contact of the reactants at the interface. In order to further investigate the effects of the additives, an analysis is carried out on determining the rate limiting steps of pristine and samples with potassium using a mathematical model called the Jones and Sharp method. The results are summarized in the table. Desorption rates are limited by an interface controlled mechanism, while absorption rates are limited by a diffusion controlled mechanism. The potassium modified additive doesn't change the rate limiting step for the desorption absorption reactions, but it accelerates this slowest step of the reaction in both cases. In order to understand further the processes taking place upon desorption, evaluation of the crystalline phases were studied by in situ synchrotron powder X-ray diffraction. Sample with potassium was heated from room temperature to 300 degrees, and each 15 seconds a diffraction data was collected. The data is plotted in 2D control plot, where reddish colors indicate the higher intensity. XRD pattern acquired at room temperature reveals that several phases of lithium titanite may fit with the data due to the broadness of the diffraction peaks. With rising temperature, presence of the orthorhombic lithium magnesium imide is identified, and following phase transformation from orthorhombic to cubic phase is identified at about 220 degrees. This analysis alone was not enough to identify the potassium phases that are responsible for the improved reaction kinetics. Therefore, we decided to perform X-ray absorption spectroscopy measurements at titanium edge. In this way, changes in the oxidation state of titanium can be detected. The changes in the oxidation state of titanium were determined by the shift of the absorption edge of the samples. The results were compared with the measured Xenos spectra of titanium dioxide and lithium titanite reference materials. It was reported previously that titanium has an valence state of 4 in titanium dioxide and 3.5 in lithium titanite. Comparing the references with the sample, the absorption edge is positioned at higher energies respect to lithium titanite. So it's showing that the titanium has an oxidation state between 3.5 and 4 in our sample. So I should investigate the potassium containing phases which have oxidation state between 3.5 and 4. One of the questions we may ask also is that, is there any change in the nature of the additive during hydrogen absorption desorption reactions? And the answer is no, as we see in this graph. Titanium has the same oxidation state in the as-milled desorbed and reabsorbed samples. The results tell us that the additive may act as a catalyst rather than changing the reaction pathway. In order to determine the nature of the additive based on the knowledge I have so far, I did transmission electron microscope observations from the as-milled samples. TM observations were carried out in Dresden. A bright field image of the sample with potassium is shown on the left, diffraction rings in the middle, and the rings are related to the main phase magnesium amide. And in this sample, nanoparticles of lithium titanium oxide and potassium titanium oxide were detected with sizes between 5 to 30 nanometers, which can be seen in the dark field image. In order to verify such nanoparticles, high-resolution TEM observations were performed at the same sample. With high-resolution TEM, nanoparticles of potassium titanium oxide are found in the two zones as seen in this image. And below, we found lithium titanium oxide nanoparticles. And titanium has an oxidation state of +4 in the potassium to titanium oxygen 3, and it has 3.5 in lithium titanite. Presence of these compounds leads to an effective valence state between 3.5 and 4, which is an agreement with the results obtained from X-ray absorption spectroscopy. As a summary, potassium to titanium oxygen 3 is responsible for the fast reaction kinetics. It is acting as a catalyst. It doesn't change the reaction pathway or the rate limiting step, but it accelerates this slowest step of the reaction. The second part of my presentation is devoted to understanding the role of lithium borohydride additive. We know that thermodynamic properties of a system can be altered by stabilizing the absorbed state or destabilizing the desorbed state. Lithium amide is a dehydrogenation product in the magnesium amide lithium hydride system, and the reaction of lithium amide with lithium borohydride forms lithium BNH compounds that have ionic conductivity. These compounds are known to improve the reaction kinetics, but there is a lack of information in understanding the reaction, understanding the role of these compounds. Moreover, there is a possibility to change this lithium borohydride to lithium amide ratio and to form different lithium PNH compounds. The effect of this mechanism and kinetic properties are not well known yet. In this direction, I prepared the samples with varying amount of lithium borohydride and used a similar sample coding as before. Thermal behavior of the pristine sample has similar behavior as before. There are two endothermic peaks around 200 degrees, and this peak temperature is lowered by addition of lithium borohydride. For example, by adding 2 moles, the dehydrogenation peak temperature is located at 176 degrees, and it has a single dehydrogenation peak. The present single dehydrogenation peak instead of 2 is most likely due to a change in the reaction pathway. Additionally, the ammonia release is also mixed up to 180 degrees, and main released gas is hydrogen from this sense. In order to evaluate the effect of the addition of lithium borohydride on the activation energies of the samples, I calculated again the apparent activation energies using DSC measurements applying the Kissinger method. Activation energy for the pristine sample is found to be around 170 kilojoule per mole, and addition of lithium borohydride clearly reduces the activation energy. For example, for adding 2 moles of lithium borohydride, it can be reduced 24% to 130 kilojoule per mole. And possibly reaction of lithium borohydride with a sample leads to a formation of new compound, and presence of this compound lead to lower activation energy. To confirm this, I did the structural analysis using FTIR. FTIR measurements of the desorbed samples were done in transmission mode. As we see in this figure, for the pristine sample, NH is scratching vibrations of lithium-2, magnesium, and 2H2 is positioned at 3174. Additionally, lithium amide is present. Different from the pristine sample, all lithium borohydride containing samples, lithium-2, magnesium, and 3 is present. It is worthy to note that lithium-2 and magnesium and 2H2 is the product of the second step, and the lithium-2, magnesium-2, and 3H3 is the product of the first step of the reaction. This result may explain the results from the thermal analysis, where samples with lithium borohydride present single peak and pristine sample present double dehydrogenation peaks. Therefore, I assume that reaction pathway may be altered by lithium borohydride addition. Presence of lithium 4BN3H10 is confirmed in all lithium borohydride containing samples, and the formation of this phase can lead to reduced activation energy in these samples. In the sample with 0.5 mole of lithium borohydride, both lithium NH2 and lithium BH4 are present. And in this sample, it is seen that amount of lithium borohydride is not sufficient to react with all lithium NH2, since we still see this phase. And later on, I took all my samples and cycled them for 20 times, 20 hydrogen absorption desorption cycles. The reaction kinetics of the first dehydrogenation is presented on the left, and hydrogenation on the right. Measurements clearly show that even after adding small amount of lithium borohydride, which is about 3.8%, the reaction kinetics are improved significantly. increasing the amount of additive doesn't seem to have any kinetic improvement. Moreover, the capacity is reduced due to the increment of the additive. Durability of the additive over repeated cycle is also crucial to investigate because the reaction kinetics and hydrogen capacity at the first cycle and then the longer cycle numbers can be very different. Therefore, I did 20 hydrogen absorption desorption cycles for each sample at isothermal conditions. Theoretical hydrogen capacities can be seen in this figure as solid lines. Pristine sample has a theoretical hydrogen storage capacity of 4.48%. Experimentally, I have seen 4.8% hydrogen is released, and this reduces to 3.48% after 10 cycles. For this sample, measurement time was much longer. That's why I stopped at the 10th cycle instead of 20. But if you look at the samples with lithium borohydride, containing lithium borohydride, cycling stability was very positive since there is no detectable capacity drop within the 20 cycles. Now the question may arise, how stable is the reaction kinetic between the first and the last cycle? In order to compare all samples together in a column graph, I calculated the time required to reach 80% of the total hydrogen capacity. And 80% of the hydrogen capacity for the pristine sample is desorbed in 70 minutes, as seen in this graph. For samples containing 0.5 and 1 mole of lithium borohydride, the dehydration times are less than 20 minutes, and they increase from first to the 20th cycle. For 2 mole of additive containing sample, reaction kinetics are very stable, and desorption time is around 10 minutes. In the case of hydrogenation, pristine sample absorbs 80% within 60 minutes. All lithium borohydride containing samples absorb hydrogen very fast. However, we have the same trend as before. Only the sample containing 2 mole additive has stable kinetics with absorption times around 3 minutes. In order to gain understanding about the intrinsic kinetic constraints, solid state models were applied to the first dehydrogenation and hydrogenation kinetics reactions using Sharp and Jones method. In case of the dehydrogenation kinetic behavior, it's possible to see that the reaction kinetics are different from, the rate limiting steps are different when the sample contains lithium borohydride. A pristine sample is controlled by interface mechanism, while all the lithium borohydride containing samples present a diffusion control mechanism. It's clear that the reaction pathway for the lithium borohydride containing samples are different from the pristine one. In the presence of lithium borohydride, more stable dehydrogenation products are obtained at the amide-hydride interfaces by exothermic reaction of lithium borohydride with lithium amide to form lithium 4B and 3H10, and this accounts for the change in the rate limiting step. Once this phase is formed, it may help to the mass transportation of the ionic species. The first hydrogenation kinetic behavior of the samples showed that depending on the lithium borohydride stoichiometry, the rate limiting steps are changing. The reaction rate of the pristine sample is controlled by three-dimensional diffusion model. This kind of mechanism is usually occur for several hydrogen forming materials. Considering that this is a multi-component system, it's possible to relate the diffusion control mechanism to the slow mobility of the species upon hydrogenation. Additive containing samples show interface control mechanisms. We know that the reaction kinetics of these samples are much faster Therefore, this change can be attributed to the presence of highly ionic conductive lithium 4B and 3H10. As a conclusion, in the system with titanite additive, I detected potassium 2, titanium oxygen 3, and it doesn't change the reaction pathway. It acts as a catalyst. It doesn't change the rate limiting step, but it accelerates this step both in hydrogen absorption and desorption. In case of a system with lithium borohydride additive, I detected lithium 4B and 3H10, which changed the reaction pathway. This forms at the interfaces of amide hydride particles and stabilizes the intermediate product lithium amide. Presence of this highly ionic conductive additive may improve the mass transport properties. Comparing these two systems, the system with lithium borohydride is interesting since we can tune the thermodynamic properties by changing the amount of lithium borohydride. Moreover, it has very stable kinetics over cycling. This is a big advantage for real applications. I would like to thanks to conference organizers and my colleagues from Helmholtz-Zentrum, Geesthacht, and external colleagues who helped me to do all these structure characterizations and experiments. And these works are already published this year in scientific journals. And for questions, you can also contact me by email and in other platforms. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gizer, for this nice presentation and very interesting work. Just now, if there's any question, you can write the chat part, or if you want to talk and ask with the sound, we can write the chat part. We can open your voice from the host section. We can wait a few minutes.
Okay.
Is there any question or not? I think there's no question for now. If any participant want to ask any question for this presentation, our participant, Dr. Gökhan Gizer, right here his email address. You can contact with him and ask about your questions. Thank you, Dr. again, to be a participant this virtual conference.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.